Truman the Grim Merchant. Please ignore the scratch, a cat fell on my face. The Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny is a seminal piece of internet history and a certified bird of paradise. The project, with music by Lemon Demon and animation by Sean Vulez, was first released on Newgrounds in 2005. As the name suggests, the song chronicles a massive battle between practically every character in fiction, plus a few from real life. A few months ago, Merfolk Queen made a BlueSky post, noting the latest person named in the song to receive a Magic the Gathering card. That got me thinking, of the 26 people left, plus those shown but not mentioned, who's most likely to receive a card, and who's Benito Mussolini? In this video, I'll go through each of the characters by order of appearance and rank them based on my sense of the likelihood of them getting a Magic card. I'll base this off of factors like past Universes Beyond releases and the character's popularity and tone. And I'll say this now, if the very topic of UB makes you mad, feel free to skip this video. There is no need to engage with a topic that upsets you. First off is Batman. I'm going to group characters by property when that makes sense. Bill isn't going to get a card if Ted isn't. That means I'll also discuss Superman and Robin here. I think the DC comic universe is one of the most obvious UB candidates out there. It's very popular, the world is expansive, and the top-down opportunities are rampant. Every reason behind the Marvel sets would apply equally to DC. Now, some might point to the Marvel sets as the reason why there won't be a DC one, since the companies are traditionally rivals. However, the two have a long history of licensing their characters to the same companies, so I doubt that would be an issue. There is the possibility that, like Marvel, there would be more than one DC set. If that were to be the case, I think the Batman side of the world would be the most obvious candidate. That would put Batman and Robin in one, and Superman in another. Regardless, I think it's fairly likely that all three will appear on cards eventually. Next is Shaquille O'Neal. There has never been a sports-themed UB. If there ever was, Shaq probably wouldn't be a top choice, as according to ESPN, he isn't one of the 100 most popular athletes. He has a strong presence, and he certainly isn't hesitant to give out his likeness, though. Still, I think he's fairly unlikely. Aaron Carter has a lot of factors that make a card very unlikely. He was a famous musician, but not top-tier famous. He had some personal controversies, and he's now passed. Plus, he's just an odd choice for a fantastical combat game. I don't think he'll be the first non-Hatsune musician UB. Abraham Lincoln is the first real-life person in the song that I would classify as historical. A number of historic figures have appeared on UB cards, mostly in Doctor Who and Assassin's Creed. In addition to his historic notability, Abraham Lincoln has appeared in a whole lot of media. I wouldn't be surprised if he one day appeared on a card, but he's not a main character in any works that I would consider a shoo-in for UB. While McGruff the Crime Dog is perhaps most associated with the 80s, he was a thing when I was a kid in the 2000s, and he's apparently still going strong. In recent years, he's had a podcast, and his website notes his appearances in Family Guy and the Rescue Rangers movie. Clearly, the NCPC has a desire to engage with new media. Maybe they'd go so far as to put him on a Magic card. And you know, Wizards does charity things pretty often, so it's not a 0% chance. But all that said, the song specifically mentions Scruff McGruff, who is not even the most prominent McGruff. Embarrassing. Jackie Chan is iconic, one of the biggest stars in the world. He too is not particularly selective in giving out his likeness. My specific prediction is a Kung Fu Panda secret layer that has Monkey in some art, but not necessarily as his own legendary creature. I'm well aware that for all of these, my biases and knowledge pool color my perception of these franchises' relative relevancies. This is perhaps no more evident than with Indiana Jones. I've always loved Indiana Jones. I was pretending to be Mutt Williams in 2nd grade. Don't say you understand what I've been through. The series is perhaps not at its cultural height these days. I'm really enjoying the new game though. It's a lot better than the last one I played. Anyway, with all that said, they do a lot of Gen X nostalgia secret layers, and I think this would fit perfectly. I could see a set of reskin cards of some of the heroes from the original 3 movies, and maybe one of some of the artifacts. Next is a Care Bear. Clearly this is not a property concerned with potential overexposure, but I'm again not sure if the brand would like to be associated with a fighting game. But maybe I'm embarrassingly uninformed, and there's some surprisingly violent Care Bear media out there. I remember watching a cartoon as a kid with a cyborg in it. Neville Flynn is then depicted, but not mentioned. Oh, you don't know famous movie character Neville Flynn? Interesting. He's Samuel L. Jackson's character in Snakes on a Plane. Now, if it was Samuel L. Jackson in any role, I think a card would be quite likely. The man works. But the presence of these snakes makes me feel like I have to go with Neville Flynn specifically, and he's not getting a magic card. We next see Mario battling with Sonic. The latter's cards are good evidence for the feasibility of the former. He's an incredibly recognizable character, and I'm sure that a Super Mario Secret Lair would sell extraordinarily well. The only question is, what class type would he be? Eric Baumann and Richard Kayenka are two internet history figures who I would consider obscure these days. For those that do know him, their reputations make cards quite unlikely. The Back to the Future DeLorean also appears, if we want to count that. That's another very nostalgic 80s property. I honestly had to double check that they hadn't done a Secret Lair for it already. The only caveat is a potential DeLorean licensing issue, but that hasn't stopped a lot of other merchandise. We then see R2-D2, C-3PO, and a Jawa, and later Darth Vader and Han Solo. I know I'm biased towards this too, but I think Star Wars is one of the most obvious universes beyond candidates out there. It's popular, expansive, and has big overlap with the Magic fanbase. I think one or more sets eventually is likely. In that case, R2, 3PO, Vader, and Han would certainly get legendary creature cards, and it would be pretty likely that a Jawa would at least show up in some art. Now, Star Wars does currently have an active TCG of its own, but so does Marvel, so that's not necessarily a preventative factor. Anime is a cultural blind spot of mine, but even I know how big a deal Goku is. Dragon Ball is a pop culture staple, and Japan is one of Magic's biggest markets. Next up is Tobias Funke. Now, Arrested Development is a cult classic, but a sitcom set in the regular world would be an odd choice for Universes Beyond, and there are much bigger examples of those anyway. Maybe if the Russo brothers had stayed on for the Netflix show. Chuck Norris. Perhaps if UB had started 20 years ago, but his fame has diminished and he's had some controversies. Lemon Demon agrees with me. Yeah, Benito Mussolini's not getting a card. Now, the Blue Meanie, on the other hand. Picture a reskin Secret Lair of him, the Yellow Submarine, and the animated Beatles, and tell me it wouldn't do well. It would be the perfect bridge between Hatsune Miku and Flesh musicians. Cowboy Curtis and Jambi the Genie are the first characters that I am totally unfamiliar with, having never seen Pee-wee's Playhouse. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean they are popular, but regardless, a children's series probably isn't appropriate for this. I'm combining RoboCop and Terminator. I know they're distinct franchises, but they're both sci-fi blockbusters from the same era that could work as Secret Lairs. Between the two, I think Terminator would sell more. Kirk and Spock are both iconic characters from a very long-running franchise. A Star Trek UB seems plausible, and they would certainly receive cards in one. Lopan comes from Big Trouble in Little China, yet another 80s movie. It's a cult classic, but it was a box office failure, and it hasn't reached the heights of notability that many of the other 80s properties have received UBs or been discussed in this video have. The song specifies every single Power Ranger, which almost certainly won't happen. If we just say some Power Rangers, things become a lot more likely. Power Rangers is one of those perennially popular franchises that multiple generations of kids have grown up with at this point. I think the video shows the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, who would almost certainly be represented in a Power Rangers product, as some of the, if not the most, iconic Rangers. I haven't seen Power Rangers since like 2012, so someone chime in with who the most relevant Rangers are. Bill and Ted might be the most 80s movie here. I'm running out of things to say about these, but again, a Secret Lair is entirely possible. Ironically, that would also be a good place for Lincoln to at least appear in some art. The Rock is big, both physically and culturally, and he has a lot of iconic characters, like The Rock's character in The Fast and the Furious, The Rock's character in DC movie, and The Rock's character where he's in a jungle. Yeah, his characters don't necessarily have the most distinctiveness, but just by the sheer volume of how many things he's in, plus his popularity as a wrestler, I wouldn't be surprised if he got a card. I started the script before Hulk Hogan died. That probably does lower his chances. Wrestling is another blind spot of mine, but I do know he's a big deal. That said, he's probably the most controversial real person in the song. We see the iconic items of Freddy and Jason in the death pile. I think they're both fairly likely for Secret Lairs. Child's Play, Creepshow, and The Evil Dead all got one, and Freddy and Jason are more popular than at least those first two. I think Freddy's a little less likely because, the cats come back to finish me off. The ultimate winner of the Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny is Mr. Rogers. Out of all the characters from children's media in the song, he's the worst fit for a combat card. The Navy SEAL story is a myth. Not only would a card be a weird fit, I think it would be an insult to his legacy of gentleness and thoughtful children's content. Right before the end, we briefly see Pac-Man's corpse. I don't think Pac-Man has enough distinct characters for a whole secret lair, but a Bandai Namco one could work. Except for Dark Souls, which social media comments tell me has enough support for a full set. What creature type is a Pac? Orb? I see some sources on the internet make claims that I'm not sure about. I think that might just be a guy in a top hat next to a hook. Regardless, I've looked at this video at 0.5 speed for long enough. I am calling it. Here is my final list of Ultimate Showdown participants. Thank you for watching this video where I attempt to present expertise on a bunch of characters who almost all debuted well before I was born. Who are your favorites? Who would you most like to see receive a UB card? Comment that and anything else below. Thank you to my patrons for their support. Join them maybe. I have a Twilight podcast that's not a joke.